First of all, I'm going to do a presentation of the project. The theme of the project is a square, two houses with a dedicated space for local crafts and a public covered space with a market area and a chapel. The chapel is not intended as a church or a mosque, but is more like a multicultural chapel. It is a meeting space for people of different religions. It is not a space where religious meetings take place, but it is a space where you can go to pray alone. We had some trouble projecting a non-referential chapel, which means a chapel without any religious symbol. That's because we watched some documentaries about Indonesia, and we learned that there are a lot of conflict between different religions in Indonesia. And that's really important for our project because we are projecting a chapel that is multicultural, in fact. For this problem at a religious symbol, we try to solve it with a water pool because water is considered sacred by all the religions. And to make everything more fascinating, we have created an atmosphere with light and materials. And then I cannot change the slide. Just one moment. That's it. There are some study drawings for the understanding of the proportion of the Indonesian buildings.
Yes, another aspect that is related to this multicultural chapel was to creating a cluster with different people from different cultural and religious background. That means a much rich cluster instead of having separation between different religions, as it happens not only in Indonesia but in, I think, all over the world. These were our reference. The first was this project by Peter Zumthor, and we got inspired by this atmosphere and this house that has not a perimetral walls, but only a ceiling, a floor, and some walls to define the space. And the other project is from Fujimoto, who builds some boxes that function as the rooms, and the space in between becomes not only the circulation part of the house, but an extension and a connection with the outdoor. This was our reference for the chapel. We like the Peter Zumthor chapel for its dark ambient and this path from the darkest and smaller part of the chapel through the biggest and the light-filled ambient, which becomes the most sacred place of the chapel. And also the Valerio Olgiati project we liked for its finishes that gives him a mysterious sense and these sacred feelings. And the last project was the Ocho Quebradas house from Jaravena that looks from the outside like a monolith in a different context, which gives this sense of, again, mystery and makes you want to explore it and discover more about it.
This is the master plan of our project. We have included our project in the urban plan of the students of VIN, respecting their study of the relationship of public and private space. But we have redesigned the volumes and rearranged them differently while trying to remain in harmony with the context and with the urban plan. The chapel is located in the left corner, and it's anchored to the square, but it floats more delicately on a water pool that is here. The access is located in the upper right corner of the chapel, and the building located at the bottom, that one on the right, are the houses with the dedicated spaces for local crafts. The building at the top is a public covered space with a market area. And all the buildings are surrounded by dense green spaces that becomes like walls.
Here we can see how we projected the houses, which are some rooms under a roof. And we started by creating these boxes, and then we eliminated some walls and defined this box just with a few walls. In some case 3, in some case 2, in some case just only one wall. And so they can be open and be closed with curtains, which creates more private room, maybe for sleeping, but in the daytime you can put away your bed and open up to have a bigger living room, which I think we think it's important in some small houses like this to be able to use all your houses in all your moments, not having a room just for sleeping, a room just for living room, but can be adaptable. Vai avanti un attimo quella dopo. Here we see how vai prima sulle pianti. We see how the house is built by many boxes, and our idea was to just project the bathroom and the kitchen as the essential part of the house, and the other space is totally free for the inhabitants to furnish their own houses and decide which rooms is which. And on the left, we have this workshop for local activities like batik making or jewelry. That is the input in the most public space of the house, near to the square, so that people can see these artisan working, and they can get inspired by them and maintaining alive this really interesting tradition. And another aspect is the privacy in this house, which is characterized by really open part like the living room, which has a little bit of privacy with this green like zone that provides not only a nice view and contact with nature, but can be also seen as an element that gives privacy. And the room itself can be open but can be closed, so you have different shades of privacy. And on the perimeter block we thought about some curtains, which is attached on the floor and on the ceiling with rails, that not only gives a little bit more of privacy, but also it screen you by the wind and by the rain if it needs. And these curtains are a little bit transparent, so you can see between them, but only some shadows, which gives you this sense of the life of the life inside this house. But also when you are inside, you have this contact with the square around you, other people, the community, and also the nature. We did a little bit of research of local plants and the local vegetation, because in the green area, we didn't want to create just a monotone zone, but we wanted to create different landscape using different types of plants. For example, in one corner, it could be a more tropical environment, and in other zone, it can have these very high trees that provide shadows, or it can be a very low, like bushes, that gives this beautiful landscape. So having different green zone instead of just the same thing all around.
This is one of our elevations. Here you can clearly see the difference in the perception of the volume between the houses and the church. The material that we have chosen for the buildings is concrete, but with different superficial treatments and finishes. That is a rendering, but we are still working on it. that this was only a test to understand how to detach the walls from the ceiling and the floor, like to make it float.
Yes, in this image we can see these gaps that are between the walls and the ceiling. Torna indietro un attimo, scusami. And that gives to the house this sense of lightness of the ceiling, which is very important because we decided to separate the houses and the chapel using not the shapes but the mass. So the houses, we wanted to have this really light look and very, very open. And the chapel is very heavy, very closed, as we see in the elevation. So we have in plan a similar plan form in order to make them create a connection between them. But in elevation, we thought they had to be different in order to give to the chapel like a sacred feeling, and also the big empty square in front of the chapel gives to them some importance. So the entrance of the chapel is this little hole that is created by shifting a wall that gives the sense of like not closed the door, that gives this feeling and makes you want to explore it. And it is interesting because we wanted to give an experience when you visit the chapel. So it has to be like magnetic and be catchy. And once you walk in, you are in a really, really different space that you didn't expect, because in the outside is so heavy and so closed, but in the inside is all about the light and the path from the dark area to the light area.
These drawings are useful in order to understand the atmosphere of the interior space given by the light. Our idea is to divide the church in two rooms. The dark one is more concrete and fully walkable. The other room is lightful and more vanishing. And that should be interpreted in a metaphoric way. The dark should be associated to the real world and the light should be associated to the religious principles. The wall and the waterfall make the second room almost physically unreachable. These are some sections of the interior space of the church. You can see the entrance and the light effects that the wall makes in the room.
Yeah, we like this idea of having two rooms that are connected, but you can see this light-filled water room, but you could not physically go there, and you maybe can reach it by praying with your imagination and not just going inside. So we think it gives it like a sacred feelings without having symbols, and this was for us very, very tough.
Now there are some model photos and I will show you them. Here we can see the entrance.
Yeah, in this photo, you can see how we treated the square. Now the next one, which has these lines that are engraved in the pavement and divides like the square into smaller squares that becomes more of a human scale near the houses, and it becomes more open and like monumental near to the chapel. Another aspect is the green zone that is really dense near the house, and that gives also privacy, and it fades away creating like a sort of park or a garden for people to work or stay, but they cannot reach and they cannot go close to the houses by the by the density of the plants. Here you can see how inside the chapel you can see the water and these rooms, but you have not the access to this part of the chapel.
Yeah, it's unreachable. And that's the imagination of some the final drawings that will be printed.
See, we are still working on the poster.
Yeah, on the others. Yeah. And we are finished.